Mike, turn your games down.
Hi everybody, welcome to another interview episode of Games My Mom Found. I am Mike Albertin, and who is with me tonight?
Hello there, my name is Chris Tenarium.
Hi, and where might people know you from?
I guess if you would know me from twitch.tv/Chris Tenarium. I speedrun obscenely long games, amongst other things.
Oh, yes, I will never understand how people can run Final... Like, I never thought before I met speedrunners and knew more, like, I never understood that people would run Final Fantasy games, and then I found out people run Final Fantasy games.
Yeah, not only that, some of the Final Fantasy games are really popular. There are a lot of people who run these games.
I just can't... That was really surprising to me, because I had earlier this year, I met with Blake, who I'm not sure he still is, but he was the world record holder of Final Fantasy IX, and then that was when I had started to meet more speedrunners, and I met you. I saw that you were, at least at the time, the world record holder for Final Fantasy X for one of the categories.
Yes, I was at the time. I had the FF10 any% world record for a whole month before it was bopped. And in fact, a few days ago, I actually got no sphere grid world record at a cheeky small time of 9 hours, 55 minutes.
My God. Okay, so when you say no sphere grid, you mean you didn't level at all when you played through Final Fantasy X?
So the actual category is called no sphere grid plus Flea. You're allowed to get Flea with Tidus, because otherwise it would be an absolute nightmare. You'd have to manually escape from every single encounter, and I think the chances of that happening it's like 2 in 3 or 75%. It's one of those two to successfully escape. So you would need one character to escape. And realistically, with the amount of encounters you get over the course of the run, you're just going to die to certain encounters. And I run on PC. We have autosave. It wouldn't be the end of the world. But it's so awful. So we give Tidus Flea so we don't have to manually escape from every single encounter over and over again. But other than Flea, we get nothing else. It's all base stats, base abilities, nothing else.
Wow, that is impressive. So I guess the game doesn't... So the enemies must not... Do they have like a base stat that all the bosses have, or do they level up with you in this game?
No, the only Final Fantasy in which, to my knowledge, it might happen in one of the early Final Fantasies, I don't know a whole lot about them, but only in Final Fantasy VIII do enemies level scale with you, and in Final Fantasy VIII, the scaling is so bad that you get punished for leveling up because of the discrepancy. You don't want to level up. All of your stat is in the junk. But in FF10, everything is fixed. It will be fixed for the rest of the game, other than Buranin Yenke, which is a boss later on that Kimahri fights. Buranin Yenke will scale up to Kimahri's level, but I mean, obviously in no sphere grid, it's not a problem. They're level 1 and they have they're really late on in the game. It's the boss before Seymour Fluxel on Gagazet, but they're level 1, so they'll have like 700-800 health. It's not a lot.
My God. Okay, that is just... Like, I can't even imagine... Like, I played through Final Fantasy X. It's been years since I played that on PS2, but, like, I can't even imagine going through that game without leveling at all. Like, I didn't think it'd be possible.
It's possible. It used to be a lot worse and a lot more random, but it's a lot better now. So every 30 encounters, your Aeons get stronger.
Oh, whether you win or not?
Whether you win or not. So even if you get into an encounter and then immediately flee, that counts. Bosses, they count. Forced encounters, like all of this counts. So at the very beginning of the run, you get to Kilika. This is, I don't know, like just over an hour into the real run. You get to Kilika, and there is an enemy, or like a mini boss, I guess, in Kilika Woods that's called Lord Oatshoe. It's a big plant thing with all of these different vines. We stand there and run into Lord Oatshoe for about 23 minutes. For about just over 130 odd times to force enough encounters so our Aeons are stronger, because the Aeons really do scale well, and it's crazy to think, well, surely there are faster ways to do it than just running into a monster for like 23 minutes and forcing all of you. It's really not. It makes some of the battles really, really fast later on that would otherwise be like nightmares. So at the end of High Bridge, Seymour Natus, the old strat used to just... so you kill Seymour initially, and then there's a second battle where he comes back and he's this big white and grey.
I just remember the mountain fight. That was miserable when I first did it.
Yeah,
time ago.
that's definitely a wall casually. That and Unalesca, they're both
Yes.
hell. You get there casually and you're like, how am I supposed to do this? I don't understand. When I was a young boy, I also had that. I got to Unalesca, I'm like, this is insane. And especially Seymour Fluxy has that big AoE ability. I'm like, damn, I have to get like over 4,000 health on Auron to survive. There's no other way. And now you speedrun, you're like, oh no, you just... you don't even let him get a turn. You just kill it. Easy.
So mostly it sounds like speedrunning in this game has a lot to do just using Aeons then to get by?
It's no sphere grid is mostly a mix of using Aeons and then abusing Riku's overdrive. Because Riku's overdrives are insane. You can just pump out like 13,500 damage like with one overdrive. And that'll help you get through a lot of the mid game.
Okay, well, I don't remember what her overdrive was.
So she mixes items. Now,
okay.
If you're playing casually, that +4 magic sphere is really important, right? You want to put that on your best character. You'll probably put it on Lulu or Yuna because it's +4 magic. That's a lot of magic. We just use it for Riku mixes. We don't need that +4 magic. We know we don't, right? And like HP spheres as well that give you 300 HP. We know we don't need that 300 HP. We can use it in Riku mixes. So you mix like one of them and a grenade, and suddenly you've got a Chaos Grenade, which applies all kinds of status effects and does like 8,000 damage, or like lightning marble and some kind of like other valuable item. Throw that, suddenly you've got 13,500 damage, and the boss is sitting there going, "What the hell happened there? Okay. I was alive a second ago."
Oh, that is interesting because I haven't played FF10 in years. I've been meaning to go back, but I always just remember that the game was pretty challenging at parts. I remember leveling all the time. Like it's just I always love when you talk to speedrunners when you hear about how you can take a massive game like an RPG like Final Fantasy and just break it down into all the little things you can do in that game that get past things that I would have seen impossible at the time. To me.
Oh yeah, for sure. You said beforehand we discussed it a little bit. Blake Bomb, as I know him, came onto the show, and he runs FF9. Now, FF9, there's so many like little small things you have to know about the run. In FF10, we have a wonderful guide, a fantastic guide. You can blind run the game and finish a game as long as you are doing everything the guide tells you to do. It's super wonderfully consistent, and that's partially because of how FF10 is. It is. Some parts can be challenging when you're going through it for the first time, but in terms of a speed run, it's a joy to run. Yeah, it's so good. There's not really that much that can go wrong as long as you're doing everything properly. Obviously, you can still screw something up, and like, oh, whoops, I forgot a level 2 key sphere, and well, I can't do anything. But as long as you still pick things up, these things are super consistent. Even no sphere grid, where you don't get any levels at all, where you don't use any of your levels. You can't not get them, but you don't use any of them. It's super consistent. Just look at the guide, follow that, you'll get right through. Don't worry about it.
That's pretty cool. I'm surprised that 10 can be that consistent, but that I know it makes it easier for what you guys are doing. That something's consistent, you can just follow through with it.
Yeah, it is partially in thanks to like Riku's mix. So like in the mid game, she will use all of these insanely powerful mixes. But late game, you can go to Remium Temple, which is an optional Aeon thing where you get the Magus Sisters in the Calmlands. You need a chocobo to go and get there. If you win the 3 chests, you get 30 doors to tomorrow. And if you mix those, Riku will use an overdrive called Trio of 9999.
Oh.
So every attack, no matter what you do, will do 9999. You can use Kimari's Pathetic Lancet. You can attack with a physical attack with Lulu. You can bop someone over the head with Unistaff. It will do 9999. So on top of that, you also stack all of the multi-hit things you can. So Lulu's Overdrive, like just Thunder Fury, use that. That can be up to like 7, 8 hits, 9 if you're really good at spinning the analog stick. Although those are rare. Tidus's Slice and Dice as well, that's 5 hits. All of these things, they're just super consistent. Then pair that with First Strike, which will get you first turn no matter what. Because our speed is not good. Boy, do we need First Strike.
Which makes sense. I mean, considering you're not actually using any of your level ups. So and if I remember right, with 10, the level ups just give you like the option to move in the sphere grid, and all the upgrade your through the sphere grid.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So you get experience in the same way that you would after the fight, but
it doesn't. I just remember you have to add up the number. Like I remember sitting there leveling for like hours and just letting the number get up to like 10 or 20, and then going and doing a bunch of moves at once.
Yeah,
not one at a time.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. Doing it one at a time seems painfully slow.
It was. I've been meaning to play the game again for a long time.
You really should. I would highly recommend like Final Fantasy X, just even to play it casually. Final Fantasy X-2 not so much, but definitely Final Fantasy X.
I love 10. Oh, are you able to? Do you have to watch the cutscenes, or are you able to skip the cutscenes when you play through?
So when Square Enix released the PC port, there was no like cutscene skips or anything like that. So for years we had to run with cutscenes. Like my old any percent mod record was 8 hours 42 and then 51 seconds, I think. Hang on, I can just click on this tab and find out. 8:42:51, yeah. However, there is a speedrunning mod made for speedrunners. I think anyone can still download it as long as they come to the Discord, the Final Fantasy X Discord. But that removes cutscenes, and there is a lot of cutscenes in Final Fantasy X.
Oh yes,
there is a lot of them. So the current world record is 8:40:56.
Damn.
If you take all of the cutscenes out, suddenly the world record is 3 hours and 5 minutes.
Wow.
It's a lot of cutscenes. It's a crazy amount of cutscenes.
Well, it's also so impressive at the time, like when back when this first came out and on PS2 back, I think it's 2002 is this game or 2003?
It was earlier than that. I think it was 2000, wasn't it?
I know it's early. I did not look this up before we started talking.
2001, yeah.
Okay. That's old. Yeah, because this was before Kingdom Hearts, and Kingdom Hearts 2002. Okay. Yeah, that's all. I mean, I know it was impressive at the time. I remember that. I remember the graphics and the cutscenes and everything just being so damn impressive in the early 2000s. Yeah. I still think it's impressive, but...
I mean, it looks very good for what is ultimately a very, very, very early PlayStation 2 game.
I'm also surprised that Flee works in almost every battle. Like, I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah, Flee is guaranteed, so you can just use it and escape for free. It does get a little dicey because you don't get first strike until the end of Macalania Woods.
Okay, so in the beginning you got to be a little... But I guess, that would still be... If I remember, Macalania Woods is... How far into the game is that?
Firmly the middle of the game.
Okay, so...
Maybe just tiny over. But enemies will start outspeeding Tidus once you get to Mihen. And even some of the things in Killica Woods can. But they don't really pose much of a problem because they hit for maybe 100, 200. You can just heal back up and keep going. It's more when you get to Thunder Plains and then Macalania, there are things that can just kill Tidus from full health without him having gotten a turn yet. Once you get first strike, it's not a problem because you just get Flee and you can run from everything immediately.
Where do you get first strike from since you're not leveling up? Is it from equipment?
Yes, equipment. Owaka has, just for Spheromorph at the end of Macalania, he has a weapon called Sonic Steel, which has first strike on it for Tidus.
Okay.
Without that weapon there, oh boy.
You wouldn't be running this game, probably.
It would be a lot more rough. You'd have to find a way to get teleport spheres, because the way Final Fantasy X works, you can customize abilities onto weapons. And with, not teleport spheres, sorry, return spheres. And with those return spheres, you can customize them. But the first instance you get them by just playing them is the aforementioned Baran and Yenke at the start of Gagazet. There is a lot between Macalania and Gagazet. You're going to have a rough time.
I remember one of the complaints with this game that people had, and I think I might have even had as a kid too, is that this game is very linear until you get to the Calm Lands, which is the only really area where you run around, which is very closely in the game. It's not that far before you go to Xanarkand. And I'm trying to think, is Xanarkand the end of the game, or are there more after? I can't. It's been so long since I played this game.
There's a few optional areas you can go to, Omega Ruins, but if it's just the main story, then it's Calm Lands, and then it's Gagazet, and then it's Xanarkand, and you're done. Obviously, when you get the airship, you can go back to a whole bunch of different places, but the game is very linear. It hides it a bit better than other more recent games have done. Like your Final Fantasy 13 is the one that's memed on for being a hallway simulator. It hides it a lot better than that. There are occasionally other ways that you can go, like Even if you are just a piece to keep going straight, you can take a left here, you can take a right there. It's hidden a tiny bit better, but not much better.
I think it's just we changed as a people who were, gamers. Like, we went from like 10, they were okay with it because it was so new, and then when 13's a good game. I played 13 once. I enjoyed it. That is not a bad game. It just gets a lot of hate that it doesn't deserve.
I didn't like 13 that much when I first played it, but the speedrun made me appreciate the game a lot more. It's probably the hardest Final Fantasy speedrun.
Oh.
I guess some people would also say that maybe Final Fantasy 12 on the PS2 is also like obscenely difficult, but it's really hard. There's also no breaks. 5 hours, I think. I think it's just below 5 hours nowadays, the world records, but there's no breaks at all.
With 10, I mean, since you have all the cutscenes, I guess those would be kind of breaks, then, wouldn't they? Then when you're playing through 10, if you don't have the cutscene skipper on.
10 has a million breaks. 10 has like a wonderful metaphor for the Final Fantasy 10 PC any percent or PS2 any percent is you hit new game and then there's you mash select to weirdly skip the only cutscene that you can skip. If you mash select at the start, it skips like 50 seconds. But and then after that, it's just like a minute and a half of this is my story. This may be my last chance. And they cut away from that, slowly spawning Zanarkand. Tidus is on his boat. There are lots of adoring fans outside. And there's a minute and a half, and then you do a bit of gameplay, you run along, and then there's another 2-minute cutscene. There is a lot of cutscene. There's a lot of breaks, because also for some reason, you can't skip dialogue in a lot of the cutscenes.
But you don't have to mash them either. Like, it just keeps happening, right?
Oh, sure. But I mean, like in a speedrun, you want to like mash.
Oh, yeah, you want to skip everything you can.
Dialogue you can. But there are cutscenes where you can't mash it, no matter what. It'll just have to play out in its entirety, and we generally just take breaks during those when they can, because there are some rather chunky ones. On PS2, the whole Sateki Dane section, for lack of a better term, off Macalania, where, Tidus and Yuna are in the lake, that bit.
Yes.
That bit is just over 10 minutes long of nothing. It has been known, some of the older runners, because nowadays not many people run on PS2, it's more of a PC thing, but it was known back then that some runners would leave and go take a quick shower. Some of them would go downstairs, boil a few eggs, put them on toast. Why not? You've got 10 minutes. Like,
that's funny. I mean, when you're speedrunning something, the game that's going to take you 9 to 10 hours. I mean, that's a hell of a commitment. I play games every single week for this podcast. I can't even sit down for that long and play one game. Like I can't. Like I'll play for like 2 hours. Like, okay, I got to go for a walk. I got to do some chores. Like, I got to do something. I can't do that. Like, I can't imagine sitting down. But, okay, this is what we're doing today. We're playing FF10 for a speedrun.
Yeah, I mean, it is important to still like take your breaks. Stand up, stretch your legs a little bit. My fiance always gets annoyed at me when I don't do that, and I kind of look at the time. It's like, I've been sitting down for 4 hours and I haven't actually moved. I should probably stand up, just move the legs before they become stone or something.
I mean, that's another thing I find impressive, that people are able to. Does FF10 have a lot of resets, like when you run this game, or is there something where you just kind of are able to keep going? Because
of okay, so you can always keep going. As I said earlier, there's nothing that can kill you if you're doing everything correct. So if I really wanted to, I could finish any run no matter what. However, once your time gets to a certain level and something happens that's out of your control that loses you a bit of time, you start looking at the rest of the time save you have throughout the run. Realistically, it can't PB at that point, PB being personal best. The main one is Blitzball. Just like 2.5 hours in, big reset point, because the goers can ultimately troll you. When I was a kid, I thought that match was unlosable, because the goers, who's the team you play against, the Luca goers, they're the antagonist, they would go all the way up to the goal, completely unmarked, 13 shot or whatever against your keeper, and called keeper. He's rubbish. Yep. He has like 5 save, notoriously terrible. And instead of shooting and taking the free goal, they would pass it away. And you still see this in speedruns. They can waste so much of your time. So suddenly you can be after Blitzball and 3 minutes down, and you're like, all right, well, this can't be B anymore, unfortunately. There are runners who will reset that and go again for any percent.
Okay.
I'm not one of those people. I accept if I'm going to do a run of this, it's going to take 9 hours, but I'm not tacking on another 2.5 hours onto that. There was a runner once who got all the way to Gagazet and reset and then finished a run. And it took him about 17, 18 hours.
That's just too damn long.
Yeah.
Well, no, I give you guys credit. I mean, I give all speedrunners credit for what they do, because that is such an accomplishment to me to see people run, especially games like this. Like in any RPG, I think it's very, very impressive. I would never do it in a heart and ever, but it's very, very impressive.
So, have you heard of A Hat in Time?
I have never played it, but I have heard of it.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, you should play it.
I want to. It's on my list of games.
I guess if you're playing like one game every week or whatever, it's a lot of games you're probably on your list. Some are going to slip through the net. Yeah, I get it. But yeah, the moment I knew that I was only ever going to be an RPG speedrunner, and like all of these platformer games are too hard, too fast for me, I had to live with my boom reactions. I did a run of Hat in Time. Viewer requested. A runner of Hat in Time, a very good one, shows up in my chat, starts trying to help. Now, he didn't mean anything bad like this. He meant it as it's like a motivation thing. He basically said, "Hey, I can clearly see that you haven't practiced. You're doing this all blind. It'll get much easier. Like the more you practice, the better you get." And I stood there with my internal thoughts thinking, what this guy doesn't know is I have practiced.
Oh.
If I'm that bad, I'm in real trouble. Now I'm honest, it's like, I'll stick to my silly long speedruns that go on for hours and hours and hours, and yeah, I'll leave the platformers and the Marios for the younger folk who have reaction times and stuff left.
I completely understand. I play platformers for the show, but I also cheat them every chance I can with save states or other methods, depending on how I'm playing it, because I can't play those type of games. I mean, my reflexes are okay. I just can't. I've never been good at platformers. Those are not my style of games. When I was a kid, all I played were RPGs. That's what I love playing, because if you ran into a wall, you could just level your way out of it eventually, in most cases. And that's always been my thing for all. I mean, now I play everything because of this podcast, but yeah. So I completely understand where you're coming from.
I mean, ironically, one of the reasons I was so drawn to speedrunning is because no matter what RPG I play, my chat flames me for this all the time. As soon as I'm playing something casually, I'm severely underleveled. And as opposed to going, okay, I'll just grind some levels and it'll be okay, I think, okay, how can I get through this without leveling up? How can I skip the grind and just get through it? There is an old game I played, Grandia 1.
Yes, I never played Grandia 1, but I loved Grandia 2, but I know the series.
Unfortunately, my fiance hates Grandia 2 and 3, and I'm not allowed to acknowledge they exist, so I have to ignore that. I'm sorry. Grandia 1, I tried playing that, and I basically didn't want to grind. So I tried getting through the game as little as possible, and I got through to like halfway through disc 2. There's only 2 discs in this. My fiance looks up the speed run of Grandia and like shows me a screenshot. It's like, okay, can you please get some levels now? You appear to be under the level the speedrunners are at. I'm like, all right, sure, fine, I'll get some levels, I guess. And it's not like the battles were going quickly. I was so underleveled that I would have to play like this insanely thought out fight that would last so much longer than if I just had the appropriate levels. But I didn't want to grind. So
you're not. It's in your head at this point not to grind, not to play like that. So I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
I grind constantly in RPGs. Like if I play an RPG, I will throw a podcast on and I will just sit for hours and just grind, because that's how I play. But I don't speedrun anything. So
yeah, that's. I mean, I won't miss the opportunity to. Yeah, I don't want to say cheat some levels, but to get some cheeky levels earlier on if I can. Final Fantasy 12 comes to mind. Have you ever played that?
A little bit, but not enough. I played it when it first came out. I bought it day one, and I have yet to finish it, and I own multiple copies of it now.
Oh.
But
okay.
I tend to buy stuff when I find deals or when stuff gets re-released, like the HD collection I have. Like, I'm going to play this one day. Still haven't touched it, but I haven't.
Yeah, it's a story older than time. 4 different copies and 4 hours in the game total across all copies.
I got a decent amount into it. I think I remember. I think I was midway into that game. I remember something about snow, and I remember I played for a while, but it didn't grab me, unfortunately, and I just didn't stick with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not known for having the greatest story ever, but there is a way that you can get very fast levels at the early game of Final Fantasy XII. It's used in the speedrun as well. There's a rare enemy called Dustia. If you're in the... Oh, is it the Westersand or the Estersand? It's one of them, just outside Rabanastre. It's definitely one of them. I think it's probably the Westersand. If you go into a new area, when you're at crit HP, an undead enemy called Dustia spawns. You can then kill this enemy by using a Phoenix Down. However, if you then screen transition very quickly and then go back into the area, it respawns. Oh. It's an enemy that gives a chunk of experience, and now most people who play FF12, whom I know, this is not a common trick, I hasten to add, but most people I know will just use this trick and just get some levels earlier on, saves having to grind all the way through the obligatory sewer level there is in the early game. And then the obligatory prison scene later on. Like, you don't have to sit there and grind anymore because you already have the levels, and it's quite quick.
Okay.
I don't mind doing that, just not that game. Running around in circles grinding. Yeah, that's fair enough. I played it when I was much younger, and I tried a playthrough at some point last year trying to complete the game only using guns. Turns out a lot easier than you would imagine, but I didn't remember a lot of the places. Even now, I'm trying to plat it and getting to a new area. I'm like, right, I can visualize this area in my head. It's ice and there's lots of snow and there's undead enemies. I still can't remember what it's called. There is a lot of areas like that in the game.
I don't remember anything about 12. It's on my... I've been slowly trying to go back and play some of the Final Fantasy games for the show. I've only done 6. I only done number 6 so far, my favorite, but I'm trying to do more.
6 is the best Final Fantasy. That is a good opinion.
That's why it's on the show so far. Yeah. Chrono Trigger 6 are my favorite games of all time, so we've done both of those. We're doing Cross later this year because I just need it, especially with Cross being re-released. I'm like, it's time to frickin' just play it once and for all again. I haven't played it in years.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it's hard for me because I play a game every week, so I have to like really plan it accordingly where I have shorter games so I can have time to finish that long game. One of the things I want to talk about, I'm looking at your runs, and I see you ran Final Fantasy 14 Endwalker. I'm curious what
I haven't speedrun Endwalker. I've speedrun a lot of Final Fantasy games at this point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 14.
Okay.
I think that those are the ones I've got through. I want to eventually get through all of them. The only ones that are missing are 15, 13, 12 and 7. And 7 and 13 are going to be nightmare, and 12 and 15 are going to be okay. 14 is a birthday tradition. I've never really celebrated my birthday.
Okay.
I don't know, I hit like 19 or 20 or something, and the idea of going out and getting drunk all night didn't seem as appealing as it used to anymore. So I stopped. But when I got into streaming, I was like, well, I want to do something for my birthday. What am I going to do? I know, I'll speedrun A Realm Reborn. So that's what that is. It's a base game speedrun of A Realm Reborn. You do all of A Realm Reborn in one day. I think, how long did it take me last time? 17 odd hours?
Yeah, that's what it says on here on the website.
Yeah, 17 odd hours. I'm at the age where I definitely felt all of those hours.
So you can play that game and just... So I have been very interested in Final Fantasy 14 I used to play 11 for way too much at one point in my life, and I don't touch MMOs anymore. And I've been curious about 14 because I hear so much good things about the story, but I can't do it. But I'm like, if I can just run through the story in like 18 hours, 20 hours, even if I'm playing just playing it, that interests me.
Yeah, you could do it. That is only the first. So like the base game is A Realm Reborn. Yes. And that's like the initial story and then the first 50 levels. And then it's Heaven's Sword, Stormblood, Shadowbringers, Endwalker.
Okay.
So that's only through that. However, what I tell most Final Fantasy 14 people, I like Final Fantasy 14 quite a lot. I did all of the raids last expansion on content fairly quickly. I have an Ultimate Fight clear. I do like 14 quite a lot. A Realm Reborn is not good. It's very long. There's a lot of filler. there's a fair amount of rubbish in there. Just blitz through a Realm Reborn as fast as you can. And then it gets good. But, the old RPG adage, like, it's kind of true for 13 as well, where it's hard to sell a game if your opening pitch is, well, you just have to get past the bad bit first.
No, I get it.
I completely understand all the people who are like, yeah, I don't want to go through a Realm Reborn. I don't want to spend 18 hours in a day just to get through it.
I can see that being. I just been so tempted to play it, and when I find out, like, were you able to do the whole thing solo then? Up to that?
Yeah, you still have to randomly queue with people for the dungeons in Pugs. There's no getting around that, but...
It's nothing like the old days of 11 where you sit in Juno with your Seek party up and just sit there going, need help with this mission, anyone?
No. No, it's not 11 or like classic WoW or anything like that where you go to any shout chat of any major city and it's just like, LFG, this dungeon, LFG, this raid. Like, there's nothing like that. You just queue up and the game will match you with randoms.
Okay, because I have been really, really tempted to try that, so that seeing that run makes me go, I could pull that off. I can pull off 20 hours or less than 30. I can pull that off.
I mean, you could pull it off. Obviously, like, we skip every single cutscene and do a bunch of, like, I'd say that there's not even that much weird tech in that. Speedrunning Final Fantasy XIV is really just like plot progression, the speedrun. There's nothing weird or crazy you have to do in there. It's an MMO, so it's as structured as it can be.
Hey, it got to be better than 11, where 11 be like, oh, you forgot to talk to this one NPC all the way back in town? Well, now you can't continue the quest, and we're just going to have to disband the party because you're not ready.
I've never heard of... so I've never played Final Fantasy XI, but I have heard that it is a nightmare, like, I want to become a paladin. How do I become a paladin? That's easy. All right, how do I do it? We're not going to tell you. What do you mean you're not going to tell? Not going to tell you. Sorry, buddy.
Nothing is like if you're like 11, everything is such a clusterfuck of what you have to do. Like, you have to talk to certain NPCs a certain amount of times to progress certain quests. If you don't do this, the game won't even tell you, like, and you won't find out till you get to a place, examine a door, you go through this whole dungeon, find out you didn't talk to somebody to get an item or just to do something to progress it just enough so you could open this door. Like, there are little things that can happen to you. Yeah. It's bad. I do not recommend 11. I want to play 11 again, but I want to play it hacked where I can just run around and do my own thing.
Yeah.
That's it.
I am kind of like wary of some of the older PS1 RPGs because of this. Like, they're designed in a certain way where you can just accidentally miss something and then not know where to go or what you need to find or where it is you need to go. You just have some kind of like vague clue, and that's it. You go be on your way now, buddy.
Mm-hmm. And that's some of the problems I have with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I do play old RPGs, but not as much anymore. I tend to stick with a certain... Well, I always stick with ones I know, usually.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to play more games in general. I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone for the show and play stuff I never played before. That's going slowly.
I mean, it's a good thing to expand your horizons. There are a bunch of games that I play, not like, on stream or speedrun or anything like that, but just personally, Hades is one that I just started accidentally platting out of nowhere. I was like, it's fine, I'll just do the minimal amount, and then before you know it, I was having a bit of fun, and then before you know it, the achievement said 47 out of 49. I was like, wow, when did that happen? What happened to the past 2 weeks of my life? They were there a second ago.
I did want to ask you, what got you into speedrunning?
Nothing really in particular. I think I have one of the, sort of boring generic NPC background for this that you would see in a game where you're like, I've suspiciously heard this from other people as well. The writers aren't doing their jobs. I saw GDQ, like I'm sure hundreds of thousands of people have at this point, millions if not. And I was like, this looks fun. I wonder how many people are playing some of the games I used to enjoy playing. So I went and looked for an Oblivion speedrun, the Elder Scrolls game. I saw a speedrunner speedrunning it, and it looked insane. And they were punching the king who comes and saves you in the prison, so you can advance. So they run to you quicker, so you can get to the next plot point faster. Because otherwise, they just kind of like dawdle around. And then I was like, well, I've played a lot of Final Fantasy. I wonder, are there any people speedrunning some of the older Final Fantasies? And if so, I can't imagine it's that fast. And then you go, oh, there are people speedrunning it. It's also much faster than I thought it would be.
Okay.
And from there, I had a boring 9-to-5 office job. So I never had the time to do it. But at some point, I got made redundant. And I was like, well, I have a bunch of time now. I'm not really doing anything this weekend. Why not give Final Fantasy X speedrun a go? What's the worst that can happen? And that was I think that was June 2016, so 6 years ago. And it was really fun. Some of the community showed up to help me as well during my first run. Just be like, oh, you've got to do this, by the way. Like, you missed this, go back and get that. They're a great bunch, and I just kind of stuck around and hung around, and however many years later, got the 80% world record. I moderate the leaderboards and everything now. It's a whole thing.
Okay. So I also want to ask you, what is your favorite genre of games? I'm pretty sure I know this answer, but I still want to ask.
Oh yeah, I've probably given this away over the course of the show, haven't I? I love a good old turn-based JRPG. That not even JRPG. I like a good turn-based RPG. Some of the action ones I'm just very slow for.
Do you like strategy RPGs?
You're going to have to give me an example of a strategy RPG.
Final Fantasy Tactics.
Oh, yes. Last year, I played... Oh, well, this goes into the grinding story. I played Final Fantasy Tactics.
That's a game.
And I think I did the first 2 or 3 fights. I got into the next fight, and I'm like, damn, everyone's like a level higher than me, and I was super new. I'm like, how do I do this? And they were like, oh, well, I mean, normally you grind a few fights before this one. I'm like 2 hours into the game. I'm not grinding already, so whatever, put it on the back shelf. Then got told, oh, Chris, you should play Tactics Advance instead. You don't need to really grind that much for that one. So I played Tactics Advance, and again, it was kind of like Hades, where I just looked back and went, wait, what happened to the last 2 weeks of my life? Where did they go? That was...
I have never been able to get through Tactics Advance. I have played it multiple times. I've started it, and I have just never been able to get anywhere in that game. That's one of my games that one day I have to do.
How come you've never been able to get through it?
It kicked my ass the first time, and I think I fucked up my save with laws, and I had a lot of my good characters locked away, so I couldn't do anything. The second time, or another time when I was playing it, it was right before I met my now wife, and so I had plenty of time. I was just sitting around playing it, and then I met her, and I just kind of fell off it, and I haven't gone back to it. But I mean, it's a game that I put a lot of hours, because I grind a ton of those type of games. I don't do them. That's how I play those. Like I will be leveled up as much as I can, because I don't want to get caught in a bad situation.
In Tactics Advance, all of like the random enemies and side quests, I think side quests anyway, their levels are scaled.
Oh,
it's only in the main story where the levels are fit, I think.
Okay, so that might have been
why I enjoyed it so much.
It's one of those games that one day I'm going to pick up a guide and do it with a guide that tells me recommended level, and just play through the game and stop falling off it, because I need to do it one day.
Yeah.
I mean, I beat original Tactics on PS1 once in my life, and that was a hell of a journey to go through that game, but I've done it.
I'm soon going to be playing Fire Emblem Awakening, which I'm also led to believe it's a strategy RPG.
Yes, it is.
However, in Tactics Advance, a lot of what I did was show up to one of the main story events under-leveled, and, well, it's fine, only one character has to be alive at the end of it. So... Like, if 5 people die, but one of them's okay, then that means I've completed it. In Fire Emblem Awakening, I believe there's permadeath. It's very, very hard to lose one of your characters in Tactics Advance. It's like, it can only happen in specific areas, so just play it a little bit safe there and don't DPS race everyone. But in Fire Emblem Awakening, I believe there's permadeath.
Yeah, there's permadeath. I mean, you can turn it off, but I think I can't remember. But yeah, you got to be careful in Fire Emblem games.
Yeah, there's going to be a few tragic losses, I'm sure. I'm not going to get through that, like, deathless.
They're good games. I only played the first one that came to America for GBA. That's all I've ever played and beaten so far. There's a strategy RPG that I always recommend to people that no one's ever heard of, Onimusha Tactics for Game Boy Advance. It's a good game. One, you don't really need to level I mean, I leveled, but also the thing with that game is that when you lose a fight, you keep all the experience you gained during that fight. So even if you try to get it and you just didn't get it, you just reload the fight back up and keep going, and you keep everything that you happen. So it doesn't like you don't have to do just meaningless fights. You're just doing the same fights, trying to succeed. If you fail, you just get experience anyway.
Okay, that's kind of.
It's a really nobody talks about it. It's a completely, but I thought it was a great game. It's a little strategy RPG for Game Boy Advance that no one knows exists. So I highly recommend that game.
I might put it to my mental list of things that I want to try out at some point.
It's strange. It was one of the early games I tried in GBA emulation, and then I always remembered it. And a few years ago, I put it on my phone, and I just finally made myself play it, and I had a great time. It was very much that game I would play when I was walking around doing things like, oh, okay, I got to go from this building to this building for work. Well, since I'm walking, I'll just play on my phone while I'm walking and play this game and do do a couple turns while I'm walking to the other building, stuff like that. It worked well, but it's a great game. Oh, and the last question that I want to ask you is, what is your favorite game of all time, would you say?
That answer would probably change depending on the day you ask me, honestly,
okay.
And what I remember I've played. I love Final Fantasy VI. Very open about that. If you speedrun Final Fantasy games, the question comes up in your chat, like, what's your favorite Final Fantasy? And after a while, the eye rolls start to come out, like, this question again. All right. So definitely Final Fantasy VI up there. A lot of the games that I really, really enjoyed that I played however many moons ago, I'm always reluctant to go back to, just in case I start playing them again and I'm like, oh, this is terrible.
Oh, I understand.
There's a game called Steambot Chronicles.
Yes.
That came out on the PS2. I played through that when I was little. I bought it on a whim when I was, young. That way, right? Absolutely loved it. Played it back through an emulation. I'm like, oh, I love how open this is. It's a PS2 game, but it has two completely different endings, and routes even. I don't mean like, oh well, it's mostly the same scenes, but occasionally a few lines of dialogue change. I mean, it's completely different depending on what route you
that's
choose
cool.
to take.
I know the game. I own a PSP version of it. I don't know if that's the same game or a spin-off, but I own it for PSP for sure.
It might. There was a game that came out for PSP. I think it was Steambot Chronicles, but there was also a game called Bumpy. This is remembering from memory, so there's an asterisk. I might be wrong, but there was also only like a combat simulator. I remember that being okay, and then I played back and there's like tank controls, and it's just really, really clunky, and I'm like, damn, there are like 10 other ways I would have done this myself. Where this is awful. Some of the story wasn't as good as I remember it being as well.
That happens. I mean, with this podcast, I've gone back to a lot of old games, and there are some games that I remember loving and going, oh no, it did not hold up anymore. So I completely understand that whole thing of not wanting to replay some stuff. Like, it makes perfect sense.
Mass Effect 2, I guess, again, another game I loved. I went to play through Mass Effect 1 because you can get it real cheap on through EA Play now. So I went back and played that, and about 5 hours in, there were so many like Mako only sections where you're just driving through the car. I'm like, this is awful. I'm so bored. Like, I'm just gonna do anything else.
I still like one a lot. We replayed one for the show a year, 2 years over. Yeah, 2 years ago, I think now or so, or maybe something like that. We played it, and I still really liked it. Like, it didn't bother me. The recording bothers me because I was using the wrong microphone in the episode that's on there. But the game itself, I had a great time with. But I get it. Like,
I really enjoyed the bits where during the Citadel, like the big, I can't remember what they're called now, the big brain jelly lads, and all of these like different alien races, and you're getting to know them, and all of the petty bureaucratic conflicts they all have with one another. Love that stuff. It was so intriguing. Then you just, oh, brilliant! I have to drive a Mako here. Commander, be careful. You can't drive up too close. Bang. Oh, that was the bit where it was too close, was it? My bad. I'll reload the autosave. When's the autosave? 10 minutes ago. Oh my god.
I know people hate the Mako. I didn't mind it in the last playthrough, but I don't remember it super well. I'm actually about to go. I'm going to go through Mass Effect at some point with the Legendary Edition and play it again. That's my goal, at least.
Yeah, I think Mass Effect 2 is definitely still worth it. Though I played that not too long ago. That was great.
I really want to replay that. I haven't played it in years. I mean, I have so many games on my list I'm trying to get around to. Have you ever played The Bouncer PS2 game?
Oh, I don't even think I've heard of it.
It's Squaresoft's first PS2 game. It's a beat 'em up with RPG elements. It's one of those games that I played back when it first came out in 2000, because it came out before FFX, and then I replayed it for the show, and I still liked it. It's not a good game, but I still really love it.
No, I've never even heard of it. Nomura was on it and everything. I've never heard of it.
It's what essentially what looks like is going to be what becomes Sora from Kingdom Hearts. The character named Siam Barza, but he looks like Sora grown up. The same type of style. Okay. So always people make the joke that that's gonna be Sora in the future.
Hey, give them enough Kingdom Hearts, I'm sure they'll get around to it.
Oh yeah, I replayed Kingdom Hearts 1 earlier this year, and that game did not hold up well for me.
It's a game I've never been able to get into. Never been able to get into Kingdom Hearts.
I understand.
I've gotten past the first 2 hours of Kingdom Hearts 1 like 3 times, and I'm like, I want to go play something else. I'm not that interested in this. Another game that comes to mind that I also really enjoyed, Dragon Age Origins.
That's a good game.
That's a brilliant game. There's a YouTuber who does like, was X as good as I remember? Oh, I can't remember what his name was. He played through it not too long ago. Oh, The Salt Factory. That's what the game's called. And he basically went, yes, this game is every bit as good as I remember, and I love it. I'm like, oh, thank God for that. Phew. It's not one of the bad ones. Oh, and it's not Dragon Age 2 either.
No, Dragon Age 2 is not good.
Yeah, I really didn't like Dragon Age 2. Dragon Age Inquisition. It was Dragon Age. No, this was Dragon Age 2 as a result. Dragon Age 2 was the game that made me, and I guess to an extent Inquisition as well, that made me wary about pre-orders. Just wait for the reviews to come out. That's what those two games were for me. Where the Inquisition, they're like, oh yeah, we're going back to our roots a little bit, and I was thinking, oh, it's like Origins, but he'd never actually said that. We're going back to our roots a little bit, and the map is like 10 times as big as it used to be.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be so cool. There's going to be so much to do. Why is there not as much story? Why does the Hinterlands exist?
It's EA. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I mean, I like Inquisition a lot. I beat all 3 of them. I beat 2 also. I don't remember 2 very well, but I beat 2 once. I remember loving I enjoyed Inquisition. I didn't do everything, but I enjoyed it.
I had a friend of mine, Yoko, told me, if you can just do as little as possible in the Hinterlands and focus on the main story, Chris, you will enjoy this. You
have to get out of the Hinterlands. You can't stay there. Like, you can stay there a lot longer but you have to just do a few things and get the hell out and move on with the game.
Yeah, that's pretty much what she told me to do. Just get through that, get through the main story, and you'll enjoy that. And I enjoyed that bit. It's just, the Hinterlands were rough.
Yeah, they really were. I completely agree with that, too.
Yeah, I remember the first quest I did there, you have to go find a ring for someone, because like, my husband's been killed, can you go find... I'm like, this is like an MMO side quest. I don't understand what this is for. Surely the fact that this is single player means you can craft this into some narrative. Although it probably didn't help that I just played like The Witcher 3 before that, and all of the side quests were very, if you were paying attention, intermingled into one another, which was quite neat. And
never played a Witcher game yet, for some reason.
Oh, that's a shame. Don't play Witcher 1 and 2. They have aged terribly. They
I want to play
so badly.
I want to play 1 and 2 very much so. I own both of them on PC. I know that they're not as good, but I want to play them really bad.
Oh, that's so rough.
I mean, I play a lot of rough games. Like, I go back and play stuff, and I have a different... I can handle it. I also use guides constantly. That's how I play games, so I can handle when stuff gets rough, for the most part.
If I can flip this on its head real quick, what are the best and worst games you've played for this show?
Oh, well, best game... I mean, the one that I was expecting was, I would say, Chrono Trigger, just because it's my favorite game of all time, because it has to be.
Yeah, I played Chrono Trigger last year, and it smashed so many of my expectations for what I expect from an old RPG. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
One of the games that really surprised me on this show that one of my previous co-hosts picked was Ape Escape 3 for PS2.
Escape
3. That game is way better than it has any right to be, and I just played it I think a little over a year ago. Still holds up. It's still a great game, and that is... It's kind of surprising at the time, but that was a game that really surprised me. And then some of like the worst games that we played, that like Robotech Battlecry, that was a game that I went into kind of excited for, and it was, I mean, I played it back in the day when it first came out. I didn't like it, but it was god awful to replay it. It has so many missions that just don't make sense, and the difficulty just cranks up so much. Speaking of RPGs, I finally played Golden Sun and Golden Sun Lost Age. Those two put together are amazing.
I haven't played Lost Age. I'm going to at some point, but I have played Golden Sun.
Lost Age is
so good.
10 times better than 1.
Really?
It's way better than 1, and 1 was great. And it does. I was surprised how much I enjoyed Lost Age. Right. I went into it like, okay, I'm going to play this for the show because I should, and I just loved it.
The only other thing I remember about Golden Age, despite it being really good. So you can do this thing on my channel, amass 250,000 channel points, and you can ask me to casually play through something. It has to be that big because casually playing through a game on 1 day a week takes a long time.
Yes.
And Golden Sun was one of those games. The only piece of advice I got is I'm one of these people who didn't like Hollow Knight, and I love the combat in Hollow Knight. I just permanently got lost. If there are 5 ways to go, 4 of which are wrong and 1 of which is right, I will go the wrong way 4 times before ending up on it. Every single time. Guys just told me for Golden Sun, just use a walkthrough for story triggers though, because you are going to get lost.
Yeah,
you are not going to know where you're going.
Yeah, there are some small ones that you will not find otherwise. I use guide for everything, but Golden Sun 1 and Lost Age, you need it because Lost Age opens up. You get a boat. You get a lot more freedom to travel, and there's a lot of side quests. And there's a side quest in the game where if you didn't get all the Jinn from the first game and all the Jinn in the second game, you cannot go into the secret dungeon.
Oh God.
And of course, if you beat the first game and transfer your save over, you can't go back and get the Jinn you're missing because the game's over.
Yeah, I've definitely already missed that one. I think I still have my save from Golden Sun, but I definitely don't have all of the Jinns. I missed a few.
It was a game that Golden Sun Lost Age is something else. Highly recommend it.
If you have played so many RPGs, have you ever played the Shadow Hearts series?
Yes, back in the day, I played all 3 of the PS2 ones. I still haven't.
Do you remember much about Shadow Hearts 3?
It's a good game. It's just not as good.
It's a good game. It's just not as good. Okay.
It's not as good as Covenant, and I think that's what hurts it, is that people were expecting it to be better than Covenant, and Covenant, the second one, is just something else.
Yeah.
But it's a much more kookier game. The characters are all weirder. You get really strange characters, but it's still a very good game. It's not bad.
Fun fact, my partner asked me to play Shadow Hearts 3 with the channel points thing. She played it when she was younger, and she didn't remember it being that good. But, why not? Chris, you go play it. I don't say this as a thing with hyperbole. I think it's probably the worst turn-based RPG I've ever played.
Oh,
it was so bad. Oh my God. You know what made it worse? Do you remember what the battle theme is in that game?
No, I don't remember anything about it.
It's so dreary.
But then I beat it.
It's so dreary. And there's
one or two
battle theme for it. No.
Okay, play 1 is a little. I'm assuming 1 has to be a little aged at this point. I haven't played it since PS2 era. But 1 and 2 is fucking amazing. And I'm pretty sure it still is. I remember enjoying 3, but I remember 3 being the least of the series for me.
There's just no. If you ask me why are any of the characters there besides the main character, I honest to God could not tell you.
I don't even remember this game much. So I'm watching a video right now as we're talking. I'm I don't remember any of this.
You meet a cat. You meet a dude with a very dodgy Brazilian accent called Frank. A vampire who has a whole gimmick with her thing. But you just meet them and they just come along with you anyway.
Play 2. Play 1 and 2. That's what I recommend.
So everyone who came along who was a fan of the Shadow Hearts series basically heard how little I liked it and went, don't worry, this is the worst one. If you go back and play 1 and 2, you'll enjoy it much more.
I really liked 1 and 2 from what I remember. I like 3 too from what I remember, but it's been a long time. That's funny though. You had that bad of experience.
I hated that game so much. I finished it out of spite, if nothing else.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I've beaten many games out of spite. I have a thing where if I start a game, once I get to a certain point, I will finish said game unless it just becomes impossible for me. I try to. I try never to give up on games. Once in a while I do, but not often.
I used to be a lot worse for giving up on games, but I'm a lot better with it now. Even if I don't like something, I'll try and power through with it, and who knows, it might get better.
like for this podcast, I try to beat every game I put on the show, and right now I'm only at 3 I didn't beat. Legacy of Kain, Blood Omen 2, because it froze in the final boss fight and would not load the final part of the fight, and I said, fuck it. I consider I beat it. Soul Reaver 2, because I couldn't even get it to run on PC or PS2 emulation, so I had to watch entire YouTube videos of the entire game to watch the game.
Oh god.
I wanted to play it too. There was a glitch I could not get past, and there was no workaround. I tried. And then Beautiful Joe, I wasn't emulating at the time, GameCube, and I just could not overcome that game.
Okay, so there's a very, very few games that you couldn't finish because you desperately wanted to do anything else in the world.
It was just because I couldn't. I wasn't going to go out and buy a copy of Soul Reaver 2 on eBay, hook up my PS2 and play it, so I was like, yeah, whatever.
You say that a lot of these old PlayStation games at this point are very expensive nowadays.
It was also because at the time that I found out this didn't work, I have less than 3 days to finish the game because it's already that week. The show has, I play the game a week before I do the show, and I'm like, well, I don't got time to wait to buy this, to order it, to then I don't have time.
Yeah.
Now, Soul Reaver 2 is not expensive. $25, $20, $20.
Oh, right, literally fine then. All right, never mind then.
But no, some PS2 games really are. Like we did a GameCube game, Eternal Darkness. We did on the show. I emulated that. I own a copy of it, but that game, for example, is ridiculously expensive. It can be. Well, $75 was bids on it, $80 with bids, $120 buy it now. So yeah, it's an expensive game.
There are some games that are even more than that, though. Knowing speedrunners who desperately want original hardware in the game, there are some games which are insane. Just several $100 just for a cartridge of an old game. It's like, oh man, I'm just gonna emulate it if that's all the same with you guys. I'm not.
I emulate everything if I can, just because I love save states. I'll buy it. I'll buy it on Steam. If it's on Steam, I'll buy it on Steam and play the emulation version just for save states. But I'll buy it so at least I own it. And so, like Prince of Persia, for example, I replayed Prince of Persia: Sands of Time for the show. I bought it on Steam. I own a PS2 copy, and I emulated a PS2 copy, so I can have save states. But I wanted to I'm going to buy it for $2 when you have a Steam sale, just so I can say I supported you guys again. I bought your copy of your game. I'm still going to cheat, but at least I own a copy of your game, so I don't feel like I was an asshole. So that's
Yeah, that makes sense. Obviously with speedrunning, save states are just an absolute godsend sometimes, because some save points are super inconvenient. If there's a huge menu coming up, it's nice not to have to do the 2-minute cutscene beforehand every single time you want to practice the menu.
Yeah, that makes... Oh, freaking... I give you guys all credit who do speedrunning. I could never do it. But it is impressive. All right, I think that's everything that I want to ask you. And where can people find you at again?
They can find me at twitch.tv/Chris Tenarium.
Right, and if you enjoyed this episode, we have over 300 other episodes you go listen to. We do games, we do movies, comics, TV seasons, premium shows. So check out all that. We have tons of content for you. And if you enjoyed this episode, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube. We are on YouTube with audio only, but we're there if you'd rather get your podcast on YouTube, because some people do. And want to give a shout out to my awesome intro and outro, courtesy of Helena at Hell Hasphere. You can follow her on TikTok. And give a shout out to my buddy Bill Tucker, who did the MCU roundup with me. We went through all 23 of those movies, 24 so far published. And he started his own podcast, A Gamer Looks at 40, where he interviews people to talk about games and how games have affected their lives. It's a very good show. Go check him out. And last thing to say, we do have a Patreon, so if you want to help out the show, we have a Patreon each month. You can go vote for different polls, and only for little as $1. So help out the show. I think that's everything I need to say, so we will see you guys all next time. Bye, everybody.